Good evening. My name is Rabbi Jeffrey Sachs. I'm the director of Atid and the WebYeshiva. Welcome to our semi-annual gathering of people that are interested in things that are facing Jewish life and learning, both here and abroad. We have a great honor. I have the great honor to introduce my new friend, Rabbi Menachem Bombach, who we're all familiar with through his very impressive work. A year ago, the world was captivated by this video that went viral of Rav Bombach's Haredi school in Beitar, and the very moving and powerful speech that he gave to his Talmidim about Medinat Yisrael, about Chayalei Tzahal, about the meaning of Yom HaZikaron. And no one, regardless of what camp you occupy or what kippah you wear or don't wear, was not very deeply moved by watching that video and the expression of sentiments that were so deeply felt, so very clearly deeply felt by Rav Bombach, and so very deeply imbibed by his Talmidim. I should say that in regard to Yom HaZikaron, Haba Aleinu L'Tova, of course, as is the nature of living here in Israel, we scheduled this event, and it turns out to be one of those rather remarkable days in the life of the Jewish state and the Jewish people, and the return of Zechariah Baumel, not in the way we had hoped, but at long last, is something that can't go unremarked. And but of course, we did receive very many anti-RSVPs today. We had sold out. We expected a full house tonight, but very many people told us that they opted to attend the funeral at Har Herzl, which is taking place at these very moments. So that accounts for our less than full house. But I'm sure we're in for an fascinating evening. Rav Bombach will speak to us a little bit about his work, about his very interesting life, how he came to occupy a role in a kind of countercultural position in the educational world of ultra-Orthodoxy, and to be countercultural in a culture where being with the stream is so starkly pronounced a value, is nothing to be taken lightly. He is the principal of the award-winning Letzion Barina High School, and he branched that out to become the Netzach Reshet of schools. His school for boys in Beitar, which also teaches, in addition to the completely traditional Torah curriculum that you would find in a yeshiva katana in the ultra-Orthodox world, in the Haredi world, also teaches the maths and the sciences and a whole variety of other values, as evidenced in that video. And now he's branched out to other schools in Yerushalayim, in Beit Shemesh, both for young men as well as for young women. I will leave him to rehearse the rest of his very interesting CV. After Menachem's presentation, we'll have a conversation, responses of sorts, from two people very near and dear to our work in Atid. Noa Leah Cohn, who's a graduate of our Atid Fellows program, is the founding director, after a long career in education, is the founding director of the Galeria Miklat, the art shelter gallery in Mea Sha'arim. I had the privilege of teaching there a few months ago in Makor Baruch, on the outskirts of Mea Sha'arim. A very interesting, I commend it to your attention to go visit, to see this art gallery, which is also a kind of, it's physically located in a miklat, in a shelter, but it is metaphorically a miklat as well for people in the Haredi world, men and women, who are seeking a little fresh air to breathe, a little exposure to art and to culture. I'm told that the events in her organization in some way served as the inspiration for everyone's favorite Haredi, Akiva Shtissel. and perhaps we'll hear about that. And of course, our regular panelist in the center square, Dr. Yoel Finkelman, as well, a graduate of our Atid Fellows program, also for many years the director of research at Atid. He contributed so much to what we do, and we still are very fortunate to be able to call on him. We have available here, please feel free to take, publication of a short while ago, a symposium on setting an agenda for modern Orthodox education. Please feel free to take a copy. And of course, please do remember to visit us at WebYeshiva.org. Visit us now. Visit us in the next couple weeks for the relaunch or the launch of our new website, to log in and learn and to participate in the classes and shiurim that take place around the clock, around the world, with, as you can see, fascinating people from all over the world: North America, Europe, Asia, Australia, and even here in Yerushalayim, people find it worthwhile to study Torah online with us, live, interactive study with Rabbi Brovender and with our other teachers. After the conversation, we'll have a chance for some question and answer and response from the audience, and then we'll daven Mariv at the end. Rav Bombach.
Shalom, Toda. You know, when you are speaking, you hear me? It's much better than a mic, okay? I'm not a formal speaker, that's why it's very hard for me to stand behind something. So you know, when you are not an English speaker, sometimes you have terrible mistakes. So it was one story that the president of Hebrew University, Menachem Bombach, the previous president, he asked me to join him for an event to speak to some philanthropists. Okay. Okay. So, and he told me, you know, you have to present yourself in English. So I had a terrible mistake. Instead to say I have 5 wonderful kids, I said I have 5 wonderful wives. And everybody laughed, and I didn't know why. So I said 5, it's a lot. So since then he didn't invite me anymore, and now I want to be much more focused. Another story, I was also invited to a roundtable in the Knesset. I'm really interested about the relationship between Israel and the diaspora. So the previous member of Knesset, Mike Lowen, asked me, what's your connection to this table? And I said, I immigrate to Israel, so why not? So he asked me from where, and I said, from Mea Shearim. And then he said, okay, now you can lead a table. You come from the real diaspora. So as you understand, I grew up in Mea Shearim. I didn't speak a word of Hebrew until the age of 20. That's why my English is not so perfect, so you should forgive me. So I will just give you an overview a little bit about my biography and what I'm doing today, and then I would like to speak about challenges in the Haredi community. And I feel free to ask any question, even though the rule is just to speak 40 minutes, but I like to break rules. That is what I'm doing all the time. So you should forgive me. So as I mentioned, I grew up in Mea Shearim, but right now I can't come to Mea Shearim anymore. What happened is, also for 2 years ago, Rabbi Micha Goodman, is a very close friend of me, and told me, Menachem, please, I have a friend who's going to Sydney. And I want to make some buy party. So what do you think? I should go to a bar and drink some beer? This is not the kind of buy party I want to do. So let's do something anthropological. We'll go to Mea Shearim, we're going to see new people, we're going to watch people, we're going to meet interesting people. And I really like Mea Shearim. I have very good memories of Mea Shearim. And it was such a beautiful trip. We met people. It was amazing. But unfortunately, by the end of this tour, some of the young guys recognized my face and started screaming, Bombach, Bombach. And it was not the right moment, because 150 young guys finished the yeshiva in those moments. So it was like a lynch with terrible experience. Since then, I can't go anymore in Mea Shearim. And this is not easy for me, because this is the place where I grew up. So you're wondering maybe a part of you why I can go to Mea Shearim and why it's so important for me, Mea Shearim. So after when I got married, I became a counselor for Russian immigrants. It was very good because I didn't speak Hebrew, and those Russian kids didn't speak Hebrew, so we need to find a common language. But what shocked me really, when one of the young boys came to me, was I think 12 in LF year, and he said, Menachem, listen, I need to make some homework. So maybe you can help me mathematics. And I didn't know what is mean mathematics, I promise you. I know some plus, minus, but that's all. And he said my face, and then he said, okay, I know mathematics, it's really, really tough, but English, maybe you can help me. So then I understood that I'm in trouble. So I start my journey, I start learning in, I made a first degree, then a second degree in Hebrew University. And when I finished my second degree in Hebrew University in public policy, I come up with the idea to open a preparatory program for Haredi. It still exists, and it's very, very special place, I think, to give opportunity for Haredi to study and to go to the academic world. But unfortunately, 50% couldn't survive, dropped out from this program. That's mean we cannot accept from someone to learn in 1 year, but usually people are studying in 12 years. So it's really sad because I remember those young faces who came to me, a young guy, he has one child, and he said, Menachem, listen, I'm coming with so much passion, I want to do something, but it's impossible. And I remember tears in his eyes, it was so, so sad. So it was also a moment that I understood that this is not what's going to save or change. So I come up with a new idea because I worked for many years as a principal in education for school for Russian immigrants. So I had some experience in education, but after when I saw that 50% dropped out, I come up to open a network of schools that combine secular studies and religious in the Haredi community. So for 2014, I started with the first project. And this is the project that maybe you watched the movie about the Memorial Day. This is about the first Hasidic high school in Israel, the first Hasidic high school. I think since the Baal Shem Tov, if you heard of Baal Shem Tov, it never happened before. And as you can imagine, this is not an easy thing to do. When I ask for so many people, what do you think about? You're going to send your kid, or it's possible to make in a Haredi city? And everybody said, oh, no way, it's not going to happen. But I felt inside it's maybe a time. And now I want to make a little stop and to describe a little why. Everybody knows you are living in Jerusalem, that we are more than 1 million people, the Haredi community. In 2028, 40% of all our first graders in Israel will be members of the Haredi community. Between 1 to 14 is more than 500,000 kids, okay? So more than 20,000 people are going outside the workforce with no tools. And if the GDP in 2003 was maybe $15,000, now right now it's $45,000 almost. And if so many people are now equipped with the right tools, that means that Israel is going to look really, really in a terrible shape. And this is very, very upset. And my belief that not everybody can sitting all day long and studying Torah. It's a fact. I also grew up in a yeshiva, and I'm telling you, I was not a guy that I can't sit all day long. So I'm a little bit honest with myself. And when I came to one of the rabbis and share with him about my ideas, and I said, Rabbi, I didn't want to say the right numbers, how many people cannot survive the regular system. So I said, because I'm afraid if I'm going to say the right numbers, it's going to throw me out from his office. So I said, Rabbi, I think that maybe 25 or 30% cannot sitting all day long. And I said to myself, now I finished my job. So he looked at me and said, Menachem, you cannot work anymore in this field. So I asked him why. So he said, I would expect from a guy that is working in education, he should know the real numbers. And the real number is 75%. Okay, he's a good rabbi, he was really honest. So this is about, we can also speak about leadership in our community. We can speak about the tension, the gap between rabbis and the community. So the fact is that so many young guys cannot survive the regular system, so that's why we started with this amazing project. Right now we have no any more space for new kids in my school. And we have now also elementary school in Bet Shemesh for boys and girls, and also we have a girls' school. We have also many schools. It's a network of schools. We have almost 500 kids in our system, and our intention is to get the tipping point. That's mean 10% from the community, that people will understand or realize there is no way back. Okay, maybe now it's an edge story, but in the coming years it's going to be like a fact, and people will be much more confident to send their kids to our schools. So this is our job. So now when I'm speaking about what I'm doing and how we can do it, we need to know 4 points. You know, when I'm coming to describe a little bit more the Haredi community, we need to know the characteristics, okay? And the first one is the Haredi is the guy who is obligated to the Jewish law. Okay, he's a Haredi. You know, I'm usually going to, people ask me, so why you like the Tilu me? So what's the differentiation? But you know, I'm really traveling in America very a lot. And I visit so many shuls. And I say the tension about the mechitzot, if it's supposed to be transparent, if there's the high mechitzot, it's so many dialogues and issues inside. So everybody has his own issues and his own problems. So I will try to resolve my issues inside the community. So to be Haredi, that's mean I don't want to change the halacha. That's the first one. The second one is the Haredi believes in isolation. They believe if I will be protected, okay, I will no influences outside the community. That's mean I can continue my values, and we can continue our tradition, and that's mean the Haredi will survive or to keep the Jewish world. This is one of our beliefs, and as you can imagine, this is a new world. This is an old conversation. The new world brings us new challenges. For 2 months ago, I give also a speech for American young leaders in the Misrad HaChutz, foreign ministry, and I described them. I told them, you know what is min me'asharim? It's with big walls, and the idea is to be protected from outside influences. And one of the leaders, she raises her hand and said, "Do you mean me'asharim over here? It's not far away." And I said, "Yes." So she said, it's very interesting because I belong to the GLBT community. And I have application that can show people who belongs to this community. So when I walked in Me'asharim, I try to find how many spots I can find, because they understand, they give me explanation, this is really a protected place, and I find 32 spots in Me'asharim. So this is, I said it's maybe not local people, it's maybe people who comes to visit, maybe it's about in your community. I try to protect my community. But that's mean it's a new world and it's new challenges. And it's also about it's not about the ambivalence toward Zionism and modernism. As you know, the Haredi community don't want any access to the technology world. If you heard about the story about in America, it was a very, very big event, but against technology, 60,000 people, and it was recorded with smartphones. Everybody, it's really interesting. Everybody saw. It's really interesting. So that's why it's a war. People try to. There is a new conversation. It's a new world. We cannot use the old tools to deal with the new world. That's why I try when I speak to rabbis to convince them. We need to, because Some people will say, Menachem, you are agent of change, and I used to say all the time, I'm agent to preserve my community. Because if I'm not going to do some steps inside the community, I think more and more people are going to be outside the community. I will ask you, how do you think, how many people are dropping out of the Haredi community? Do you know? Guess. 6? את יודעת? Okay, in the Dati Leumi, it's about 40%. Yeah. This is our claim. We were saying that in the Haredi community it's much better because we continue the Jewish tradition. But we know that it's about 7-8% who are dropping out officially, but we don't know how many dropping out from the community and no one knows about. That means there is no connecting to God. I know so many people inside the community, they don't want to leave the community. They want to be the belonging. I know they will pay very high prices for living the community. So they're still inside, but there is now a new phenomenon, a secular Haredi. Okay, you don't need to serve God, but you can still stay inside the community. So I don't know how to measure how many people are about this. And I will explain why. Because, and I love my community, you should know, I'm there with choice. I think we need to resolve many problems, to resolve many issues. We need to find, I love Israel, we need to do something to make Israel a better place. But still, I really believe there is some very good things inside. And I want to say why. What's the problem? I once spoke with one of the rabbis. He was an anti-Zionist rabbi. You know, there is still anti-Zionist rabbi. They live in Israel. They are enjoying from very good roots. And they are eating very... it's unbelievable. Still anti-Zionism. His family name is Teitelbaum. So as you can... So he says, Menachem, listen, you know, when you're speaking with rabbis with very intimacy, conversation is different. So he said, Menachem, I want the old Haredim should go to the army. Oh? And I said, no, just tell me about it. So, what do you mean, I asked him. So he said, listen, why is the Haredi community afraid, they have fear to send their kids to the army? Because the ones they were going to be there, after they're going to take away the kippah. Okay, they're going to become secular. So I'm asking you, people who are, a young guy who is studying 20 years in education, one education system, and one day he can lose everything, what does it mean about our education system? This is what he said. And he said, yeah, you should know, don't send no one, please, I'm not going to send them, but I want to show there is something with our system. This is not, and I will explain. When we are speaking about identity, identity is based on 3 components. About its knowledge, identification, and practice. So in our community, for example, let's say a Haredi, he knows about, let's say a Zionist, yeah? He knows about the ideological from Zionism, yeah? He is identified with them, and he practices as a Zionist. Okay, he's going to the army. This is identity in my point of view. So in our community, we are putting very, very much attention about practice. We don't know a lot about practice. Yeah, very מעשים. How do you look? Which hat you have? If you're gonna, you know, you recognize all those because they have different faces here, yeah? But if you're gonna put there 20 Haredim, I can assume that all of you will not recognize the differentiation between them. I'm telling you, I know all nuance to tell you which community belongs, okay, and what he believes, and I think maybe I can also guess if he's going to vote for Haredi party. I think that's what yeah. So I know to recognize, and we are putting very much attention about those issues. So that's why really we are really afraid. Because once they will go to the army or will be exposed to a secular society, they will lose their identity, okay? Because there is some emptiness about the foundations, about the knowledge. So what I try to do is to give much knowledge and to speak a little less about the practice, okay? I believe once they will know much more, they will know about Israel, they will know about history. They will know about so many issues. They will become much more stronger inside. They will have the confidence to be who they are and not to change their identity so fast. This is one of my ideas. And this is what I'm trying to do when I speak to some rabbis. They absolutely understand what I'm talking about, but they really still fear to do some changes inside the community, because I think most of the rabbis has some fear from their community, because maybe the community is going to throw them out. They will not be rabbis anymore. They will have, you're going to lose the position. And I mean it serious. There's some rabbis really afraid to make changes, and also I understand, because once they're going to say something, people will say, okay, now we can do some changes. We're going to make fast changes. It's going to it confuse the community. So the rabbis could. I think this is one of the reasons. So what I want to say, I hope most of you watched the Memorial movie. And this is, I have to say, I didn't do it by myself. It was just an hour movie in Woods Esser. And one of the, Dov Lipman, maybe you heard about, he just cut some parts in this movie and spread it Yom HaZikaron. And it was a really Kiddush Hashem. And what's about Yom HaZikaron? I want to say something about that. One of my teachers, when he came, we sat in the school, and he said, Menachem, listen, okay, English, very important. Mathematics, history, it's important. But why Zionism? Why you put so many creative things inside the school? It's danger. Maybe more and more parents will be afraid to send their kids. I think it's a very big mistake, and it's also, I don't believe it's the right thing to do. And I said, listen, I believe that the coming generation, what we're trying to do in our school, is to educate kids. They should be integrated in Israel with respect. They don't need to lose their identity, but at the same time to really respect the Israeli society and to be a part with their ways. And I believe that we need to educate them for solidarity. They should love Israel, respect. Even if you are not going right now to the army, but you cannot ignore. It's a karat tov. It's gratitude. It's to be a mensch. How do you can raise? What does it mean that I'm raising education, a new kids, a new generation that still they're gonna be isolated and not recognize the love and from Israel. So he said, listen, this is too much for me, and I will need to leave the school. And he left the room, and I said, listen, you loyal to your beliefs and I loyal to my values. This is my school. So I really appreciate that you're honest, you have some integrity, you know. But in my school, if I can't raise the kids with solidarity to Israel and to the Israeli society, I don't want the school. This is one of my missions. And this is about Yom HaZikaron. I want to say something about Yom HaZikaron. Maybe I will end, and then we're going to open some questions and conversations. A day after the movie was published, came to me a Haredi guy from Rehovot, and he said, "You Menachem Bombach?" "Yes, I want to talk to you." So I give him a cup of water, and he said, "Listen, I'm coming in my name and in the name of my family just to thank you." "And why?" So he said, "Listen, I have a grandmother. She's 87 years old. She lives in a kibbutz, and she really hates Haredim. really hates Haredim. And more than 17 years, we have no connection with her because she don't want any connection. And she's really a brilliant woman. She's very special, intelligent, but she hates Haredim. And yesterday she watched the movie and she picked up a phone to us and said, I didn't know there was some Haredim respect soldiers. Please come back with all the family after 17 years. Okay? So I really believe there is some there is much more common goods and common interests that we can make in Israel. And it's not easy. You know, there is some protests, some propaganda against us. It's not easy. It's a very long journey, and I can also assume that once we're going to be bigger and more successful, the Haredim, there are some Haredim at the edges is going to continue to fight with us. But I believe that maybe I lose my freedom, yeah, as a guy, as a person. But I give something to my personal kids that they see that I'm dedicated to something that could make Israel a better place. So this is a very, very big mission. And I believe in the coming years, all of you is going to be witnesses to this change. So thank you.
Thank you, it was fascinating. Maybe I don't have the same excuse for my English. I don't speak Yiddish, unfortunately, although I'm really willing to know this language. But now in the Art Shelter Gallery we have the first drawing lesson in Yiddish. I think yes, I think it's the only art course here in Jerusalem that is leading in Yiddish. Mota Brim, our mayor, director of the Art Shelter Gallery, is Bian Hasidic, and he is actually claimed to be the inspiration for for the Shtisel and Kiva Shtisel. And I need to tell you how Shtisel is connected to the Art Shelter Gallery. It's happened that the scriptwriter Ori Elon, the son of the Chaver Knesset Elon, he was learning art in our gallery, and he happens to see the Haredi guys that pop up sometimes, you know, just looking for 1 minute what's going on in this place, and sometimes they are coming and taking out of the bag, only nylon bags, some bold pictures they have done, and showing me and asking me how and where and why. But you see the eager to develop their creativity, and that's those people gave Ori Elon the inspiration for Kiva Shtisel. And I told him that I saw the TV program, and I told him that he already marked me the vision that I should achieve in 20 years, maybe, hopefully. There is there a section that Kiva Shtisel got a prize, and he got very welcomed in a Tel Aviv gallery, very yuppie one, and they help him to develop himself as an artist. But in our days, it's not. Maybe now it's starting to get changed. But I have so many stories of Orthodox artists that got the opposite reaction and couldn't break through the glass ceiling. Yes. I started my way as an art scholar, first of all as an artist, and when I went to learn art history in the Hebrew University, I learned so much about other nations and other communities, but I found out that I don't see myself in the curriculum. There is no reference or no representation of Orthodox or women or Jewish contemporary artists. Or if I can combine Jewish contemporary and women art, You won't see anything about that. And I realized that there is a lacune, there is a blind spot that should have been changed. So, although there is lots of open-minded for otherness, yes, we learned about Africans, about Palestinians, about Chinese, but about the brothers from the from the close neighborhood of the Hebrew you couldn't see any references. So I couldn't find any material in the library, so I needed to go to the field. And that's how I mistakenly found the Untitled Gallery that was established by the very famous Baalei Tshuva from the Baalei Tshuva movement, like Rabbi Uri Zohar and Rabbi Mordechai Arnon, that was known as Pupik. I don't know if you're familiar with the Israeli culture. And also Ika Israeli, that was very famous artist. And they all break through to be Orthodox, to the Orthodox community. But in those days, in the 70s, it was like you were got converted in Israel, or maybe worse than that. And the environment was like you need to shut the door behind you, neglected your past, and go and get assimilated in the new community. And why I mentioned that, because I think that part of the changes that are starting in the ultra-Orthodox community are also owed to those Baalei Tshuva that get through into the ultra-Orthodox community. Because after 20 or 30 years, they really were willing to be one of the group, one of the community. They understand that they are never will be the same. And at the end, they understand also that they have a uniqueness that they can benefit the ultra-Orthodox community. And that's how the Untitled Gallery was founded 15 years ago in Makor Baruch. They got only a shelter from the municipality, but I see it metaphorically, as you mentioned, as the underground, sort of underground or even counterculture that happened to be a hub, happened to be a home, a place for people in this community that want to develop and to find a place for their creativeness. So I can see more and more people from the community that hear about us and coming to get inspiration and to see a place. Our agenda is to make an art place, an art gallery that is open for everyone. It's mean also for the ultra-Orthodox community, because if you think about the amount of this population, like you mentioned, and how many art places or culture places that are available for this community in Jerusalem, it's not in purpose at all. So for a student, for an ultra-Orthodox person that wants to look at art, to visit an exhibition, he can go to the places here in Jerusalem most of the time. And me as a teacher also, I have to go and check carefully, and I've never could recommend my students just go and look. It's impossible. So that's why I think it's necessary to have such places that can respect the whole communities in Jerusalem, to be inspired by art. But I want to add another point for what Rabbi Bombach ended his speech, that I found out that this place, because it's an art shelter, and it's not affiliated to any section in the Haredi world, and I'm really trying not to be connected, to affiliate it to any sector purposely, because I want that the Chabad and the Breslav and the Mea Shearim and the Litvak and the Hasidic, all of them will be feel convenient in the place, because art is a universal language at the end. So I found out that it's also a place, because it's unaffiliated, that also other sectors from the Israeli society found themselves convenient in the gallery. And the art happened to be a place that make bridges between the communities. And lots of people just pop out, they are very curious. How come that there is a Haredi artist? How come there is a gallery in the ultra-Orthodox community? We want to see. And they are coming also, and I feel that they're stereotype, and they're are getting change, because they see the Haredi, they see other angles and other aspects. They are not so common in the Israeli way of thinking about sectors. Also, I want to share with you some moving moments in the gallery, because one artist came to me and she told me that for the first time she was able to invite her family for her exhibition, for the opening. She was an artist, and she wanted to continue her identity as a Haredi, but in all the places that she wanted also to develop her professional as an artist, it wasn't suitable for her family to come and share those exciting moments with her. But in the Art Shelter Gallery, they felt that their agenda is being respected and their values. So I was very moved when she told me that for the first time she can bring her mother and her father to see her work. But in the other hand, for example, I'm holding in my hand a new catalog that I'm very proud of. It's our, I see that as the Project Degel
Flagship
flag project of the gallery. We brought, I found out 15 ultra-Orthodox artists. Some of them are also Baalei Tshuva. I must admit that in the art section, lots of Baalei Tshuva are really dominant. And but they, I was able to give them a name, and also to recognize them as professional artists in the Poptodox exhibition. Poptodox means pop art, a combination between pop art and Orthodox. And I found out 15 ultra-Orthodox artists from all over the world. Muncie, Chicago, Brooklyn, Italy, France, Tzfat, Mea Shearim. They didn't know about each other. And they didn't realize that they are all doing the same thing with the same genre, the same art style. And they were, and I will never forget how in the opening they were like hugging each other and so happy to see they are not alone. All of them were sure that they are the only artists that are doing this stuff. And also they got a name. And they got a recognition. More than 1,200 people came to the show. Yes, it was in the Jerusalem Biennale that is going to be held again at October this year. And I'm going to show a very interesting exhibition about twins artists. One of them is Haredi and one of them is secular, and they're twin brothers. And each of them lead a special way in their art career. One of them is Dudu Gerstein, that is very known in the Israeli commercial art, but he's very known out of Israel. He's like one of the most famous Israeli artists out of Israel. And his twin brother is Yoni Gerstein, that he became a comics and caricature Haredi artist, the first one in the Haredi newspaper. And it's amazing to see, and I think this is a capsule of the Israeli society, Israel community, and to bring them together in an art exhibition, I think is something important for the Israeli society. Thank you.
The gallery?
The gallery actually is in the center of town, but you need to cross the transparent wall of the light rail.
Yeah.
Yes, it's in front of Machne Yehuda Shuk. It's in Makor Baruch neighborhood. It's Yehuda Maccabi Sheva. Next, Lishkat Giyus. It's interesting. It's very close to Lishkat Giyus. It's one of the.
You can search for it on there's a website and Facebook to follow their activities.
Yes.
So I really feel here that I'm in the role of those who can do and those who can't make sociological generalizations. Sorry, Chaim. But ultimately, it's way more important to actually do things than to speculate about the background, sociological background about them. But that's what I'm here for, so that's what I'm going to do anyway. Just a few brief comments and then one attempt to kind of make sense out of what's going on. The first is that I'm curious about the fact that things in the US and things here seem to be moving in opposite directions. The generalization used to be that in the US, kind of even in the Haredi schools, everybody gets some kind of general education, and now anybody who's following the headlines, especially in the New York City Hasidic schools and what's been going on there in the last few years, realizes that the trend is moving away from general education. And here there's these kinds of seeds of something a little more opening happening, when in the past...
You don't get education, but you get measles.
But here there seems to, which used to be the kind of model of really no education, at least for boys. So there's signs of that moving in another direction. I think also another thing that comes out of especially Rabbi Bombach's talk is something that's pretty well known, but the Das Torah just isn't. Meaning the leadership is not the leadership. The people who are held up as the leadership is not the leadership. The things that are pushing the Haredi community in whatever directions it's going, multiple directions simultaneously, is not because there's great rabbis at the top of the pyramid who have great vision of what's going on and are pulling people after them. That's really just not what's going on. Now I'm going to try to make some sense to kind of organize the background of this, and I think that the question that I'm most curious about is the extent to which projects like this are trendsetters and the extent to which they're outliers. Is this something that we're going to see growing and developing and really making a big change in the coming years, or Are these the kinds of things that that somebody has to try, but ultimately they're not really shifting the ground? And I think that has to do with the dynamics between a couple of subgroups and the relationships between them. We might call kind of Haredi true believers. That is to say, they follow the general trends. They wouldn't be involved in art, men or women. The men would not be involved in general education, either as a result of the fact that really deep down they believe in that, or simply, well, that's what Haredim do, and since I'm a good Haredi person, so that's what I do. And then there's the group of what some of the literature has called anusim, but we might expand that a little bit, meaning troublemakers, but they behave themselves. Meaning they don't like what's going on, they're not happy with what's going on. They wish they could get their kids, especially their boys, more general education. They wish there was a possibility for a kid who can't sit still to join the army, but there isn't. And so I'm going to toe the line on the outside, even though I don't like it on the inside. And I might even do all kinds of things that are rebellious as long as nobody knows about them, and you hinted a little bit about that. And then the third group are these kinds of the edgy, the people who are making changes, the people who are doing something, the people who are opening new schools and opening art institutions and galleries, and the people who are creating Nachal Haredi, and the people who are creating professional education, and the relationship between those is, I think, often governed by two somewhat contradictory patterns. The first pattern is that contrary to what the Marxists will tell you, people really believe the ideology. It's not the economics. People will make economic sacrifices, will do things that make no economic sense because they genuinely believe in it. And so the theology is the base, and the economics is the superstructure, almost. And that's kind of one trend, is that people really believe in it. And the other trend is the enormous power of policing institutions, of mishtur. And those particular powers are shidduchim and acceptance to schools, which are very, very closely linked to one another. If you step a toe out of line, it's going to be very difficult to get into the kinds of schools, and very difficult, therefore, to get proper shidduchim for your children, which are related to, which are a way of positioning yourself politically, socially, and economically within the community. And the result is that also breeds an enormous amount of cynicism, meaning an enormous amount of practice that really isn't linked to what people believe. I have absolutely no idea how to measure this in terms of percentages, but I think broadly speaking, this picture is kind of accurate, that there's these three groups. Of course, there's also the people who actually leave. And the key is the shifting ground between true believers, anusim, and the people who are doing new and interesting things. What will happen when graduates of these schools, will they get good shidduchim? Will they set themselves up within the community? Will they be accepted within the community in a good place within the social hierarchy? If people who are creating art, they get credit within the community, and they get celebrated within the community, then you'll see more ways of copying this. There's, I think, an irony as we are a week before the elections in which these kinds of trends cannot happen without political support, meaning providing of funding and the like. And in some ways, political support is totally destructive because it's so easy to brand a politician who's pushing from the outside for change in the Haredi community as a hater, and as somebody who's an enemy, and then there's a backlash. Obviously the Yair Lapid phenomenon, is closely related to that, and I'll end, as is my natural tendency, on a kind of pessimistic note, and that is to say, there's no guarantee that it comes out well. Meaning, Menachem Friedman, the great scholar of Haredim, the person who founded the field of Harediology, if you will, has long since retired, but has been saying that the economic basis, the educational basis of the Haredi male education system has to change because it doesn't work economically. He's been saying that since he started his career in the 70s. So there's no guarantee that anything at all is going to change. The consequences of that not changing, I think, are really nasty for the country. And in some ways, as much as we talk about Iranians, and as much as we talk about Syria, and as much as we talk about Palestinians, as much as we talk about the things that get the headlines, the social and economic and the sense of solidarity, which you talked about so much, that's critical for where the country as a whole is going to be in 20 years when there's every reason to think that the Haredi population is going to be much, much larger and influential than it is today and it was 20 years ago. So on that optimistic note, I'll pass the microphone back to Rabbi Sachs.
Thank you all so much. We have time for some comments and questions from the audience, then we'll give our speakers a chance to respond, to rebut, and then we'll hear maybe a closing word from Rabbi Brovender. So just moving around this way, I'll give the pride of opening to our friend and teacher, Chaim Waxman.
Just a comment about Yoel mentioned about the shift in the United States is in the opposite direction in the Haredi community. It is so in the modern Orthodox community as well. Israel has moved in one direction, the modern Orthodox community in many ways, and modern Orthodox community in the United States has moved in the opposite way in many ways.
General question to primarily the last speaker. What segment of the economy do you see this huge Haredi community participating in?
Hi. The Haredi community is clearly the fastest growing Jewish community in Israel. If the leaders aren't willing to make changes and people don't have skills to earn money, what's the plan for making it sustainable? The more and more it grows. I mean, how do you do that?
Okay, I have a question about Haredi, the Haredim not supporting Zionists, not being Zionists. Don't they realize that, they have all these yeshivas, that if there were not the modern state of Israel and we were under the Brits or the Turks, would yeshivas be so blooming?
I have a question to the panelists to try and understand a little bit better the relationship between what you're doing in the non-Haredi world. So, and to try and understand, what can the non-Haredi world effectively support what you're doing, or does it really create more problems for you than benefits? And a similar question around Menachem, in your schools, you talked about the curriculum, but I'm also curious whether you have a goal of more people-to-people interactions with communities outside of the Haredi community for your students.
Yes.
I think I'm continuing with your question and maybe more succinctly in terms of what can we do? What can we, as sitting here and understanding what you're saying, what can we do to help you?
I need $1 million next week.
Cash.
And I guess the other piece to it is, do you accept teachers who are not of the Haredi ilk? Will they be accepted, and can they help you influence?
To mention, I don't think he was joking about the $1 million, but I will say that I think I neglected to mention that I spent a fascinating day visiting the school, and if anybody ever has the opportunity to do that, you should certainly take it.
Two questions. One, for Rabbi Finkelman, where you mentioned the three segments, the anusim, the more traditional, and the edgy, what are the percentages if you took the Haredi community, what would that look like? And for Rabbi Bombach, you sort of glided over a statistic which I think I'm a little bit familiar with, but I think is a little bit scary. 40% dropout rate from the modern Orthodox community. If I were a Haredi, I might well say, why would I want to become more open and more involved in the community if the Orthodox community that has tried that is suffering such attrition?
Perhaps just one more question, and then we'll give our panelists a chance to respond.
A question to Rabbi Bombach. Who are the kids that are coming to the school? Meaning, as Rabbi Finkelman completely depressed us, we understand that there's a challenge here. So I'm curious who those kids are. Are those the kids from what we call the Chutzikim, American families that have more open-minded? Are there any kids that grew up, again, you have the Haredim that went off the derech, so to say, who was saying, what the heck, we're not part of the community anyway? Do we have any mainstream people? Just explain this in 2 seconds. The Yishuv, for example, back in the day, got mainstream people. Rabbi Lau was an example, as Yishuv graduate. Many of the famous lawyers. Are we getting mainstream, or are you seeing more like people from the outskirts joining it?
Yes. Okay, just one last question right here.
I'm going to say what I want
Just
because
one
I don't
question.
remember none of your questions, so I'm going to say what I want.
I too had the privilege of visiting Rabbi Bombach's school in Beitar Elite, and it was very, very impressive. And it was really.
Now I recognize
you know who I was before. The question I was going to ask you is: there are many, many groupings of schools in Israel. It's an extraordinary number of schools, from the secular to the to including state Haredi schools and so on. Is there any grouping to which you are looking to join, or is that a way of going forward and being helped financially, among other things?
So we'll let our panelists respond. Perhaps we'll give Bombach the last word.
I only want to add that Rabbi Finkelman, that there can be another option, that there will be maybe a new combination in the Haredi society. I see that now, and I'm working with groups. The edgy one can establish their own communities with their own recognition, like what's happened to the Baalei Tshuva in our days. So I see that there is a process that's starting like that, and especially Israeli Haredi that want to, that they are recognized Israeli, they are Zionists, but they are also Haredi, and they are more and more happen to recognize, together and to say loudly their belief. So this is also something that's happened now in this community.
Okay, first of all, I'll start off by saying that contrary to various websites, I'm not a rabbi. I've tried to get rid of that title, which I didn't earn. I don't think anybody has the foggiest idea what the percentages are. I don't think there's any way of testing it, because even if you tried to do a survey, nobody would tell you the truth. The people with greater or lesser levels of cynicism, or the outright anusim, are, by the nature of things, not spending a lot of time talking about it in public. Also, I think that do they realize that the role of Zionism in the state of Israel in supporting yeshivas, broadly speaking, some do and some don't. A lot of the cynical ones do, but you're not allowed to say that too loudly, because it'll be bad for your shidduchim, and that's part of the thing that makes them cynical. But human beings are very good at not noticing things that they don't want to notice. It's, I think, hardwired into who we are. And I'm going to try to tie together some of the other questions about the section of the economy and related to isolationism. I think that ultimately nobody cares what sector of the economy Haredim join. And I think even there's been a lot of talk in the literature and on television and some op-eds about this notion of Israelization. I don't think that the Haredim are becoming more Israeli. I don't think it's a good paradigm. I don't think it explains things. And I think it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But even more than that, I think nobody cares ultimately about that. Or I shouldn't say nobody. The politicians don't care. The things that the politicians are concerned about is tax revenue. And I think it's even more deeply than that. I don't mean that cynically, meaning ultimately you want to balance the budget and have enough money for roads and for trains and for army and for all the things that we need. And it's going to be difficult to do that if you have low workforce participation. And I don't mean that cynically at all. But in the end of the day, I think it's more than that. I think fundamentally, because it's about workforce participation and not ultimately about military participation, that ultimately live in isolated communities, live how you want. You want to be more Zionist, you want to be a little more Israeli, great, we'll be happy about that. You don't want to, that's also fine. If the economy makes it, if the economics works, and if at the end of the day we can balance the budget to the extent that that's possible. So I say that both descriptively. I think that that's true about a lot of policymakers. That they deep down, they may not say it because it's not good for headlines, but deep down what they're really concerned about is workforce participation. And I also say that not only descriptively but proscriptively. I think that's true. I think that the best thing that the non-Haredi community can do to support initiatives like these is to make it absolutely clear that there's no interest whatsoever in undermining core Haredi way of life or beliefs. Continue to live as you want to live, but the things that concern us are that there's contribution to the greater whole. Even if I don't like paying taxes, but you got to do it. So I think that that's something both descriptively and proscriptively that's important.
אני אמור להגיד עכשיו.
About your question, I have two kinds of parents. One kind, people just, I have to say, I'm not working with dropouts at all. This is not my target, and I'm not working in this field, because once I'm going to open for dropouts, I have more than 10 schools each year. Okay, the need is very, very high, and I just try to go inside the community. So first of all, there were some parents who said, Menachem, I want to stop the circle of poverty in my home. I know there is no way, and I know the only way to resolve this issue is the academic world. So they say it publicly, yeah? With some parents, also maybe they're more open-minded, but they're still inside the community, okay? They're looking Haredi and they're acting Haredi, and this is. There were some parents also, they know the kid is not going to survive the regular system. Okay, they said, my kid is very curious, has curiosity, he wants to read more, wants to know more, he wants to play football, he wants to make some exercise, and it's still Haredi. I'm telling you, you're welcome. Just, you can meet the kids, and this is absolutely mainstream. In Beit Shemesh, we have a school, there was more, I think 25% of them is Americans, but still the rest of them is really Haredi. Okay, that's the idea, and this is my mission. Yeah, not to work with edges, just to go inside more and more. This is the only way to influence and to convince the community that you are still staying in the community even when you have finished the project. And so, if I answered your question about yeah, I need to remind me about so many questions here. I have to say about America. We are now a flagship ship, Sfinat Degel.
Yes.
So many Americans in Williamsburg, in Borough Park, heard about us. And so many of them tried to connect with me. And there is one Hasidic rabbi, his name is Danziger, he lives in Cleveland, and he said, listen, Menachem, I heard about your work, and I think the only way to resolve our issues in America is also to make the same model in America. So he said, Cleveland, no one can say something against me. I'm the only rabbi in Cleveland, Hasidic rabbi. So I want to really interesting to make the same model. So he's really honest rabbi. He came to the school for a week and speak with the kids, with the parents, with the staff, and now we are helping for him to build secret. Don't say for no one. His new school, and the same for Hasidic. And I mean, I believe there's so many Hasidics going to come. So now about what you said, it's really interesting because now Israel, because it's the center of the Jewish nation, everybody wants to follow what's going in Israel. So the Haredim, the Hasidic, there is no Hasidic school that combines secular studies. I find it out. I didn't know before, and they want to make the same what's going in Israel. So this is very tough in America, and that's why we are listening to in the media about secular studies in the Haredi community. And the same is also in London, and that's very, very sad. And so many people came to me and tell me, Menachem, once, if you can, we want to do the same thing in the Borough Park in Williamsburg. And just for 2 years ago, we tried to open the same thing next to Monsey. It started, but they Canaan, they heard about and they destroyed it completely. So it's an issue, yeah. But once we're going to show our graduates, they're going to see they're still in the community. You're still a normal person, but you're a doctor. You can finance yourself, and all the rabbis needs people with money. So they're going to say, okay, go to Bombach. Yeah, it's very good. It helps my community. They're looking for people who can sponsor them. You agree with me? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's why I think people knows about us, and I hope more and more people will understand there is no another way to educate the kids and to finance the family. So why the Haredi is sustainable, it's not sustainable. If you know more and more people asking very tough questions, and right now we have more than 12,000 Haredim in the academic world. It's not a lot, okay, because 7,000 of them are women, but still it's much more than for 10 years ago. And right now we have 7,000 soldiers Haredim in the army. This is really 7,000. And this is really a huge change. I can't send my kids to the army, because once I'm going to send them, the parents were not going to trust me anymore. So I'm really not worried about the army, because so many people feel they have the responsibility to be a part of the army. But once I'm going to send them to the academic world, once they're going to be a part of the workforce, they're going to act different, they're going to think different, and I hope they're going to show that we can stay Haredi in a new way. That is my hope, and that's my belief, and I have some very good, I can prove it. I have some graduates, they are making a beautiful and a perfect job.
My question was more about what the other leaders think, how they expect it to be sustainable.
There is no, in the Haredi world, there's no long-term policy. Okay? There is no one speaks about the future. No one speaks about how we can resolve the problem with the Palestinians. No one speaks about
that, just economics.
No one, there is no question, because Shomer Israel, each day is blessed with new ideas. There is no, you can open a Modia, Yated, all those Haredi newspapers. You're going to speak about the past, not about the future. And this is really crazy. I have to say, we have, Noah, she knows, I'm leading also a leadership project in Mandel for the Haredi community. And this week we bring someone very professional, and he shows some data about what's going to happen in Israel in the coming years. And this is real data. It's not fake news. Yeah, it's real data. And one of the guys is a journalist, is a Haredi, and he says, Ribono shel olam, that's what he said, he's a Hasidic. Is that Moetzet Rabbanim, Moetzet Dolei Torah, the Haredi council, he knows about those things? They know, he starts screaming, he starts crying. He was shocked.
no one of the Haredi members of Knesset helped me in my, I feel alone. I have very good friends, but finally to make it happen, we need a lot of money. A lot of money. And none of the Haredi members of Knesset tried to help me. I can tell you about the Treasury Ministry, Finance Ministry, they tried to help me. And they said, okay, I have to tell you it's impossible because the Haredim now in the coalition, they're not going to let us help you. So this is very, very sad. And you know why? Because I'm raising more individuals. They're not going to be followers. If those members of Knesset, Agudat Israel, are not going to really help them, they're not going to vote for Agudat Israel. And this is now, if you know, there is new rates, so many Haredim, they're not going to vote anymore for the Haredi. There's a fact. People asking how it's going to happen there. You are growing, and still staying six members of Knesset. It doesn't work. But it works. They're going to Alikud, they're going to Gaz, they're going to different people. So, yeah.
Tells the Rebbe, you appears to be the only one that is actually pushing men and women to go to college.
I tried to speak with him. It was really hard. And also one of his assistants told me that he's really tired to make some new wars, because if you know his history in the Haredi community, it was not easy for him.
No, he's excommunicated from everybody, that's fine.
Yeah.
But in Machon Lab, the first people that showed up in the Haredi program were Belzers. He pushes them.
But you know, many of them, this is not a change. I'm telling you, I know all those, but it's not a change. It's neutral. You know, to make changes, it's too late. We need to push so many people right now and to make it happen. There is no any privilege to sit aside and waiting to see what's going to happen.
Toda rabba.
My question was misunderstood, I think.
Very briefly, restate.
Okay. My question about Zionism and the Haredim is that not just having finance of the yeshivas, but even permission, opportunity to have so many yeshivas if we were still under a foreign,
It's a larger theological question.
Yeah.
right, under British or Turks, would we have the opportunity to sit and have yeshivas?
So for sure, it's really right, and it's a pain what you are saying. We need to appreciate, the fact that we are under this government. What?
Under Jewish rule.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why we can see people are trying to ask themselves questions. And that's why we can see some movements. And there is now a new group, Haredim. It's a secret group. They called Haredim Israelim. They identify with Israel. They want to send their kids in Israel. And in the coming years, there is very pragmatic view in the new generation. They're asking much more questions. And I'm very optimistic. I'm telling you, we need to work very hard, because the change comes from bottom up. It's not coming from the rabbis. But we need to make very, very deep and fast changes. And we're going to see in the coming years very, very a better Haredi community.
Someone had asked, well, what can we do? So if you each have a sentence answer, we'd be happy to hear it. $1 million.
Not to be judgmental for the Haredi community. I think they cannot release themselves. It's a story about circumstances. I know if you're going to meet, I promise you, each Haredi, they are special people. It's the problem that we are collective. But once we meet us as individuals, it's a circumstances story. We want really to preserve the Jewish and the Haredi world, and to be close to God. And I think we need to be tolerant also to the Haredi world. And people like us, we need to help us to tell us again and again, and to try more connection, more partners, to make this happen. It's not going to come from inside the community, but people like you, I think, could be really, really good partners. And this is not about money. It's about cash.
If you will promote the Orthodox art, by first of all coming and recognize there as artists, and second, as I really believe that everyone needs one picture like that in his house, because it's also
Not like that.
yes, because it's also part of our identity. It's part of our culture, and if we understand that it's much more holistic than just a lecture. It's also in the visual culture of our life. It's also part of our identity, and that it's really will promote this era. Thank you.
As is our custom, we turn to Rabbi Brovender for some concluding thought.
What makes it a custom? We've done it for many years.
I want to thank the panelists, Rabbi Bombach, Dr. Finkelman. It's not so easy to give up being a rabbi. And Noa Cohn. I think that there is an underlying issue that nobody is interested in dealing with. And that is that on the one hand, many Haredim are looking around to see how they can ensure their financial, economic future. It's a problem. I mean, if you don't work and you don't have independent, not independently wealthy, existence becomes a problem. And so there are a lot of options being explored. Rabbi Bombach's option happens to be most interesting because it's most essential, it gets to the root of the person, etc. But there is one thing that no one seems to be interested in. That's because I think somebody mentioned it, I don't remember who, we live in a tribal setup. Rabbi Bombach, did you say that? Tribal, you know what a tribe is? Like, I have my tribe, and I don't really care about the other people, right? And the days of coarse interaction between Dati Le'umi and Haredi, it's over. It's gone. I mean, I live in Matesdorf, which is deep in the 17th century. And we don't fight with anybody because there's only us. There's nobody else. And if you live in Yishuv X, there's only you. There isn't anybody else. So if I would ask you, because most of the people here today are Dati Le'umi, modern Orthodox, well, why should you study mathematics? Well, could you explain it to me? Because we think why it's important to study mathematics. I went to a modern Orthodox day school in America. I studied math every year for 12 years. I was a math major in college, and I never understood why I had to learn trigonometry in high school. I didn't understand. What does trigonometry have to do with anything? So if we want members of the other tribe to accept our position on education, somebody has to make the position. It can't only be because of economics, I think, because economics tend to be confusing. There are a lot of people in the world who made a lot of money who are not particularly well educated. So that it's hard to make the connection between education and economic independence. Noa Cohn thinks it's important to have a center of artistic expression. Personally, I agree, but I don't see anybody who's trying to explain that. Why do you need different forms of expression? Why do you have to learn how to write? Why do you have to learn how to play music or do art? Why do you, as a community, why is it important for the community? I don't hear that. I hear that the people that Noah mentioned, the names that were mentioned were Balei Tshuva. Balei Tshuva, a certain part of their worldview came before they became datiyim. So that's different. But besides a miklat for people who have this odd tendency to do art, who is explaining to my neighbors why it's important for them to go to a museum? I don't know. So I think that there is an issue beyond the issue. And the issue beyond the issue is that we should try to break down the walls that separate the tribes and try to communicate with each other, just as I think the Haredim have successfully communicated to others the importance of Talmud Torah. I mean, it's really an amazing phenomenon that they have created, that the Haredim created. They said, okay, can you imagine somebody in a town in Midwest America saying everybody should study physics? That's all they should do. They should just study physics day and night. I mean, I can't imagine that it would sell that well. And here there are, the Jews have said to every single child under their jurisdiction, what you're supposed to do with your life is just learn Torah. And not just learn Torah, but learn at a very high level, be very competitive about it, being excellent in the way you do it, and they did it. They actually did it. And I think that they had an influence, a very strong influence on the yeshivot. After all, the yeshivot, they're called Dati Leumi yeshivot. I mean, they're just yeshivot. They're not anything else. They're yeshivot. So, here we are, confronted by a tribalism that I find non-productive, and perhaps we should look around for ways to clarify the issue. Why should we be studying whatever it is you study in school? And why should we be looking for ways of expressing ourselves that are new and different and productive? And again, I thank the members of the panel. It was very interesting and terrific.
Good.